Now, I think it's important before we go any further that you realise this is nothing to do with the Alan Bennett Talking Heads, which I think he did in the 90s, maybe the 80s, which were a kind of series of monologues about people just discussing normal life in Britain. They're really fantastic. I'd recommend them if you can find them, but they are nothing to do with this episode, which is all about X-Men.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now seeing the beginnings of another stage of human evolution.
In every human being,
there's not many people that'll understand people like us.
there exists the genetic code.
You'll be safe here.
What kind of place is this?
You're not the only one with gifts.
For mutation.
I think what makes X-Men popular is that it's because in X-Men everyone is different. Obviously in real life everyone's different, but in X-Men people are more different. Obviously they have powers, and sometimes these powers aren't necessarily work in their best interest. Like rogues, you can't touch people, and I think some people, on some kind of level, that people can relate to these things, and they can't touch people, or they can't interact with people, or there's something stopping people from reaching out to other people because of people's differences, whether it be skin colour or race or whatnot. And the thing about X-Men is that they strive to overcome these things. Like all great fiction, it's all about overcoming differences, and I think that's the appeal of X-Men, in my opinion.
When I first suggested it, I wanted to call the group the Mutants, and the consensus was that, no, don't do that because nobody knows what a mutant is. And I said, that's crazy. No, kids won't know. So we finally arrived at the name the X-Men. I thought of that because it's Professor Xavier, and they all had an extra power. And I said, all right, let's call them the X-Men.
Oh, cartoons. Definitely the X-Men cartoons. I'd say they used to be on Live and Kicking every Saturday morning. Just put the video in, press record, and then cry when I woke up too late on a Saturday morning to record them. There's nothing worse than having a series recorded and then having like 2 episodes missing out of it. Oh, it was fantastic. It was the closest thing to a live-action comic book, still is in my opinion, but in terms of animation quality, closest thing you'll ever get to a live-action comic book, in terms of detail, storyline, how fleshed out they were. I mean, obviously I didn't know this at the time, I only know this afterwards from reading the comic books, but the voice acting, although, yes, okay, some of them, especially Cyclops, what a douche.
Obviously the classic question is, who's your favourite X-Man? And obviously the classic answer is Gambit. And annoyingly that is my favourite X-Man. So, is it X-Man when it's in the single? I should have done any research for this, shouldn't I?
Well, maybe you can help me with something, Stanley. Take a look at this. What do you think?
No, I can't touch that.
My favourite X-Man has to be Cyclops. He's always been my favourite for the cartoon series, for the first 2 films, and in the comics. For the films, which is probably what most people know, in all honesty, he's a bit of a dick to Wolverine because, oh my god, Wolverine, he's an assassin, but he's amazing! Let's give him all the everything, the credit, the honour, let him be main character. No. Cyclops is a badass. He is a tactician, he is a strategist, he is the boss. In the 2000s, when Xavier buggered off wherever the hell he buggered off to, who was in charge of the X-Men? Who became the de facto leader of the X-Men? Cyclops.
there wasn't a character I really disliked. Apart from maybe Scott Summers, Cyclops. I didn't much think for him. He was a pussy. Such a whiny little bitch. Oh, Jean Grey. Oh, I love you, Jean. Oh.
Yes, there aren't really the right words for how annoyed I became about what they did to Cyclops in Last Stand. He was one of the main characters in the Phoenix sagas. Honest to fucking God, he became the Phoenix a couple of years ago. I know this was after The Last Stand, but still, that is how much of a badass and how connected he is to the Phoenix. And what do they do in the film? Kill him off!
Apocalypse, without doubt. Geezer's favourite character, without doubt. 5,000 years old. You know, he's an absolute nut job who's convinced he's not a mutant when he is. Actually put himself into hibernation so that he could wake up, you know, hundreds of years down the line, just to make sure that he wakes up when there's more mutants about, so the mutant gene's taken over. Can transform himself, pretty much he's in control of his body's atoms, so he can make any shape, etc. Give himself any physical based superpower, and then to top it all, he gets access to, you know, very, very, very advanced alien technology, and then augments his body so he becomes even more of a badass. He just literally wants to start a war that's going to wipe humans. You know, well, he doesn't even want to wipe humans out. He wants to see who's the stronger. You know, a mutant stronger or a human stronger. So that's his entire purpose. Is literally as a catalyst for war.
I'm hoping Cyclops comes back, and he comes back evil. Like he is now, in the comics. He's evil. He is the main big bad guy. He tells Magneto what to do. Magneto! That doesn't make him the best character ever. I'm not entirely sure what.
You can't go wrong with Magneto, can you, to be fair? I mean, of all villains in all fiction or cinema, I think Magneto's probably one of the best.
How did you do it? How did you take away my power?
I didn't, Magneto. I merely tricked you.
You lie! I couldn't control your gun. You made me lose my magnetism.
You're wrong. I just guessed that you'd overlook one simple thing. Your magnetic power only works on metal, like all magnets. But my gun isn't real. I made it out of wood, specially to fool you.
What? A wooden gun?
Because Magneto's is underlying principles and what he strives for, and you know, it's relatable. I mean, you can see Magneto's side of the story. I know sometimes that's not always the best for a bad guy. I mean, you don't want to understand his motivations and whatnot. You know, you want him to be evil, and you want him to you know, you don't want to have to understand him. But no, that's what I like about Magneto, is that, you know, you do understand where he comes from and what his motivations are, and you can understand why he genuinely wants to kill all humans.
Fire!
Eric, you said yourself, we're the better men. This is the time to prove it. There are thousands of men on those ships that are just following orders.
I've been at the mercy of men just following orders. Never again.
But one of the better ones has to be Magneto. Magneto, once the X-Men's biggest enemy, became a loyal member of the team. And who was he loyal to? Oh, I'm sorry. Was it Cyclops? Screw you, Xavier. Years and years of trying to get mutants to work together, and who is it who gets it to work? Fucking Cyclops.
Oh, yeah. That's our guy.
Because I like to think of X-Men powers in quite a practical way. And obviously, as far as I know, Gambit can just set cards on fire. Maybe he can do other things, but he loves a lot of cards on fire. And I used to play a lot of poker when I was about 18 to 21. I was never that great at it. And it would have been fantastically useful if I could have just gone, oh, boom, that's on fire, so game over. I would have lost no money at all. And I think at the very least, what I like about Gambit is he does have this chance to get a legitimate business going, and I think that's quite exciting.
Hey, now Bub, you listen to me.
Favourite related video games? I would have to say would probably be the beat 'em ups. X-Men Children of the Atom. X-Men vs Street Fighter, absolutely fantastic. I mean, you've got other stuff which was like on the Mega Drive and the SNES and things like that, but I'll be honest with you, at the time I was more into like, you know, Maximum Carnage with like Spider-Man and Venom and stuff like that. So X-Men really was something I used to watch, but when the games come out, they didn't tend to be of the quality that other licensed Marvel games were.
I don't think there's any kind of RPGs, right? Although, to be fair, I think, you know, X-Men would make a great RPG, or maybe even kind of MMO. I mean, obviously there's DC Universe online, I mean, but I mean, there's an entire universe in X-Men unto itself, really. I mean, you could have like an MMO where you just like, you start your character and you get like a randomly selected special power to start with. I think that would be a great idea.
What power would I like and why? It's got to be super speed. It's got to be. It's not a biggie. Everybody wants like, you know, X-ray vision or super strength or something like that. But no, there's a. I will say this is taken from the DC side of things a bit with the Flash. But yeah, to be able to like break the sound barrier and all the rest of it, get from point A to point B in literally no time at all.
I don't believe there's anyone out there who's seen the films who hasn't thought about this question. And my power would be controlling humidity. Now, it doesn't sound that exciting, does it? But if you think about it, and again, this is not a clever or new point, but all baddies will need some kind of business, just some kind of admin operation to get all their schemes going. There's nothing remarkable about that whatsoever. And obviously they're going to require office work, and usually these are done on quite short contracts, I imagine, which would probably lead to a lot of temp working, which is, I've done that a bit in the past. And obviously with temp work, they just literally, you know, they call you on the Monday and you're in for the Wednesday. So what I would do, as an X-Men, I would pose as just a normal temp worker, get into the baddies' office building, and then from there just control the humidity. So everyone in the office would just be really lethargic, because I'd suddenly make it just really damp or really dry, depending on where we were in the world, and all the air conditioning would get knackered. And I reckon productivity would drop by at least 50%.
Yeah, I think about this my whole life, and I still can't nail it down to something. I don't know. I think I'd like to be able to control vibrations, because at the end of the day, everything vibrates. I mean, all matter. And if you could control the vibrations and matter, then you could quite literally control everything. Why? Just want to take over the world, obviously. World domination.
So where do I stand on the films? Second one is, again, it's a classic. Every time I watch it, I'm not disappointed with it in the slightest. First one, I remember going to see that and really liking it at the time. But I've watched it more recently. It doesn't stand up.
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? same thing that happens to everything else.
And the third one is just a huge pile of turd. Yeah, I mean, that thing should just be disregarded as if it was never made.
It's probably the less said, the better about The Last Stand, really. I didn't think it was bad. I thought they were probably killed off a few too many characters for my liking. But like I say, I think the continuity of that one is going to be disregarded anyway, isn't it, I believe.
With this film, they're going to delete it from the history of cinema, not in some horrible artistic purge sort of way, but through a genuine creative idea. It's an extremely exciting concept, I think, and one I can't think that's been done before in cinema history. And if you consider this, you could take Batman and Robin, arguably one of the worst films of the 20 years, and turn it into something legitimate and actually quite interesting. Because you could just turn it into a fever dream in the new Batman-Superman film. Like all, what's his name? Little Ben Affleck. Yeah, all little Ben Affleck has to do is just wake up and go, "Oh, nice to see you. What was that about?" And then suddenly there you go. Batman and Robin was just some weird fever dream that Batman had. And there you go. It becomes a legitimate part of the canon again.
The thing about the first X-Men movie is that it was just good enough. It's not great by any stretch of the imagination. People overrated it at the time because it didn't suck. And that was a massive deal. When you consider that people just come off the back of Howard the Duck and Batman and Robin and Spawn. This is before Raimi's Spider-Man movies. This was way before Nolan's Batman movies, before Iron Man, before the Avengers. So the fact that a Marvel movie didn't actually suck was a big deal. Then the second film came along and improved in many areas, but still just a decent movie. And then stuff happened that we will not go into, so let's just skip ahead to X-Men First Class, when this series finally became brilliant. Not just comparatively brilliant, but actually genuinely great. Within the hands of filmmakers who knew how to hang the intelligence and subtext of the comics, while also making it genuinely exciting and a really great blockbuster.
If you're using half your concentration to look normal, then you're only half paying attention to whatever else you're doing. Just pointing out something that could save your life. You want society to accept you, but you can't even accept yourself.
Okay, here's the thing. As good as X-Men's First Class was, and hopefully the next one will be, there's one thing that really irks me. That's the fact that we're not going to have a true R-rated Wolverine movie, and we really, really need a R-rated Wolverine movie. I'm not just talking about a few CGI blood spats. I'm talking about Wolverine with his claws out, decapitating people and ripping them to shreds, because that's what happens when you have fucking adamantium claws. The irony of the situation is that the fact that the closest thing we've ever seen to an R-rated Wolverine movie is a 5-minute video game cutscene at the beginning of the Wolverine video game back in 2009. Wolverine is not a young boy's character, he is a very violent animal. And you see that in the cutscene for the video game. You see him putting his claws through people, and you see all the blood and viscera that we really want to see on the big screen with modern special effects. Not animated in the cutscene, but with modern special effects it could be so good. And here's the thing, alright? You don't need $200 million to make an R-rated Wolverine movie. All you need is maybe $50 million and a really good director like Darren Aronofsky was going to do. So as good as Days of Future Past I hope will be, all I'm going to see is the wasted potential when Wolverine is on screen. And look, here's the thing, alright? X-Men First Class didn't have Wolverine as a main character, and when Wolverine does appear, he drops the only F-bomb in the entire PG-13 movie, and thus Wolverine's only line of dialogue is basically R-rated. So X-Men First Class got a made Wolverine an R-rated character, like he should be. But hey, what can we do?
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lyncher.
Tell Xavier. Go fuck yourself.
Well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.